A woman was expelled from her home after having two black children. Her husband said, "Go away. I won't be the father of these black children." The shrill cries of the newborns echoed through the hospital corridors, mingling with the constant buzz of hurried nurses and doctors on their rounds. In room 302, Mary Smith, her face still flushed from the exertion of childbirth, held her twins in her arms, marveling at the perfection of their little faces. Michael and Olivia, so different and so alike, were the fruit of her love with John, her husband of 5 years. Mary smiled, exhausted but radiant, as she stroked Michael's dark curls and Olivia's plump cheeks. Her eyes, heavy with sleep, couldn't look away from the babies. She couldn't wait to see John's reaction when he arrived. She imagined the broad smile spreading across her husband's face, his blue eyes shining with pride as he saw his children for the first time. The sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway made Mary look up expectantly. The door opened abruptly and John entered, panting and red-faced, as if he had run all the way there. Mary smiled, ready to share his joy, but the smile froze on her lips when she saw the expression on her husband's face. John was pale, his wide eyes fixed on the babies in Mary's arms. His mouth opened and closed several times, as if he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Mary felt a cold chill in the pit of her stomach, a terrible feeling forming in her chest. "John?" she called hesitantly. "Come and meet your children." He took a step back, as if he'd been punched. "My children?" His voice came out strangled, almost unrecognizable. Those aren't my children." The words hit Mary like a slap. She looked at the babies in her arms, at their light brown skin, so different from hers and John's. A wave of understanding hit her, mixed with a stabbing pain in her chest. "John, please," she begged, tears starting to form in her eyes. "They're our children, our babies." But John was already shaking his head, his face contorted into a mask of anger and disgust. "No, Mary, you betrayed me, with some. He didn't finish the sentence, but the venom in his voice was clear. Mary felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. How could John think that? How could he doubt her, doubt her love? "John, I've never betrayed you," she said, her voice shaking with the intensity of her emotion. "I love you. These are our children, our blood." But John wasn't listening. His eyes, once full of love, were now brimming with hatred and prejudice. "Get out of my house," he snarled. "You and those bastards. I don't want to see you ever again." With those words, he turned and left the room, slamming the door so hard that the walls shook. Mary stood paralyzed, holding her babies against her chest as silent tears streamed down her face. The next few hours passed in a blur of crying and confusion. Mary barely registered the nurse entering the room, alarmed by the noise, or the doctor trying to calm her down. All she could think about was John, his cruel words, the life she thought she had built crumbling around her. When she was finally released from hospital, Mary found herself alone on the sidewalk, with 2 newborn babies and nowhere to go. The reality of her situation hit her full force, and she felt panic rising in her chest. How was she going to look after 2 babies on her own? Where were they going to live? It was in this moment of despair that Mary saw a familiar face approaching. Lisa, her best friend since college, ran towards her, her eyes wide with worry. "Mary!" "Oh my God, Mary!" Lisa exclaimed, wrapping her friend in a careful hug so as not to hurt the babies. "I came as soon as I heard. I can't believe what John has done." Mary let herself sink into her friend's embrace, the tears she had held back for so long finally escaping. "Lisa," she sobbed, "I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go." Lisa held Mary by the shoulders, her eyes determined. "You're going to my house," she said firmly. "I have a guest room. You and the babies can stay there as long as you need." The relief Mary felt was so intense that it almost knocked her over. "Thank you," she whispered, unable to put all her gratitude into words. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and challenges. Mary struggled to adapt to life as a single mother, waking up several times during the night to feed the twins, changing endless diapers, and trying to cope with the constant pain of John's rejection. Lisa was her tireless support during this period. As a lawyer specializing in civil rights, she not only offered Mary and the babies a roof over their heads, but also started working on divorce and alimony proceedings. "He can't just abandon you like that," Lisa said one night, as the two of them sat in the living room, the babies finally asleep. "What he did was racial discrimination, pure and simple. Let's make him pay for it." Mary looked at her friend, feeling a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. "I don't want to fight, Lisa," she said softly. "I just want to move on, raise my children in peace." Lisa sighed but nodded. "I understand, Mary, but you need to think about the twins' future. They deserve their father's financial support, even if he doesn't want to be part of their lives." Lisa's words planted a seed in Mary's mind. As she rocked Michael and Olivia to sleep that night, a determination began to grow inside her. She couldn't change the past. She couldn't make John love her or her children, but she could build a better future for them. In the days that followed, Mary began to make plans. She decided to go back to college, to finish her master's degree in psychology that she had interrupted when she got pregnant. It would be difficult, almost impossible with two babies to look after, but she was determined. "I'm going to become a therapist," she told Lisa one morning while feeding Olivia. "I'm going to help other people overcome their traumas, just like I'm trying to overcome mine." Lisa smiled, proud of her friend's strength. "You're going to be amazing, Mary, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way." As Mary looked at her children, at their innocent faces not yet scarred by the cruelty of the world, she made a silent promise. She would be strong for them, build a life full of love and acceptance. And maybe, one day, she would be able to forgive John, not for him, but for herself and the twins. The road ahead would be long and difficult, full of obstacles and moments of doubt. But Mary was ready to face it, one day at a time, with Michael and Olivia as her motivation and Lisa as her unwavering support. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since that terrible day in hospital, Mary felt a spark of hope. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Mary Smith's office, casting a golden glow over the framed diplomas on the wall. 13 years had passed since that fateful day in hospital, and Mary's life had taken a turn she could never have imagined. Sitting in her leather armchair, Mary leafed through the notes of her latest case, a soft smile playing on her lips. From desperate single mother to renowned therapist, her journey had been arduous but rewarding. Every challenge overcome, every sleepless night studying while the twins slept, every moment of doubt. It had all been worth it. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, straightening up in her chair. Lisa, now a partner in the city's most prestigious law firm, entered with a beaming smile. "Hey, superstar," she joked, taking a seat in the chair opposite Mary's desk. "Ready for lunch?" Mary laughed, feeling a wave of gratitude for her friend. Lisa had been her pillar of support all these years, from providing a roof over her head when she needed it most to looking after the twins while Mary did her master's degree. "Sure," Mary replied, getting up. "I just need to call Michael and Olivia first, see how their first day at high school went." As Mary dialed the number, her mind wandered to her children. Michael and Olivia, now 13, were the light of her life, her pride and joy. Watching them grow up, develop their own personalities and talents was an experience she wouldn't trade for anything. "Mom?" Michael's voice sounded on the other end of the line, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "You won't believe it. I've joined the basketball team." Mary's heart filled with pride. "That's wonderful, darling. I knew you'd make it." "Yeah, but—" Michael hesitated, his voice dropping. "There are some guys on the team who, well, they keep making comments, about me being different." Mary's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of concern. She knew this day would come, the day her children would face the same prejudice that had destroyed her marriage. "Michael, listen to me," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You're amazing, just the way you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Let's talk more about this when I get home, okay?" After saying goodbye to Michael, Mary called Olivia. Her daughter answered breathlessly, the sound of a violin in the background. "Mom, sorry, I'm in the middle of rehearsal," Olivia said hurriedly. "Teacher Simmons said I have the potential for the state competition." Mary smiled, proud of her daughter's dedication. "That's amazing, honey. But don't put too much pressure on yourself, okay? Remember to enjoy the music too." After hanging up, Mary turned to Lisa, who was watching her with an understanding smile. "They're growing up so fast," Mary sighed, "and facing their own challenges." Lisa nodded, placing a comforting hand on her friend's shoulder. "They're lucky to have you for a mother, Mary. You raised them to be strong and compassionate." As they walked to the restaurant, Mary reflected on how much her life had changed. Her work as a therapist fulfilled her deeply, helping other families overcome trauma, seeing the light come back into her patients' eyes. It was more than a career, it was a vocation. In the restaurant, between mouthfuls of salad, Lisa asked, "And how are things with Dr. Anderson? Are you still seeing him?" Mary blushed slightly, playing with her napkin. "Yes, we are. He's kind, patient. The twins like him." "But," Lisa encouraged, knowing her friend all too well. Mary sighed. "But sometimes I wonder if I'm really ready, if I ever will be. After John." Lisa reached out and squeezed Mary's hand. "You deserve to be happy, Mary. What John did, that doesn't define you, or your worth." Mary nodded, grateful for the millionth time to have Lisa in her life. Back in the office, Mary prepared for her next session. It was a new patient, referred by a colleague. All she knew was that it was a case of amnesia. When the door opened, Mary froze. There, standing in the doorway of her office, was John. The shock hit her like a wave, leaving her momentarily breathless. John looked older, of course, with gray hairs at his temples and deeper expression lines. But his eyes, those blue eyes she knew so well, were empty. No recognition. "Hello," John said hesitantly. Well, I don't know who I am. That's why I'm here." Mary swallowed, her heart beating furiously. With a supreme effort, she managed to maintain her professional composure. "Please sit down," she said, indicating the armchair. "Let's talk about what's going on." As John began to talk about his diagnosis of amnesia, about waking up in a hospital with no memory of who he was or his past, Mary felt her mind spinning. The universe had a cruel sense of humor, she thought. 13 years after John had thrown her out of his life, here he was, sitting in his office with no idea who she was or what she had done. Mary listened intently, making automatic notes as her mind struggled with the whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, confusion, and a hint of something she didn't want to admit: hope. What if this was a second chance, an opportunity for healing not just for John but for herself? When the session was over, Mary made a new appointment for the following week, her professionalism masking her inner turmoil. As soon as John left, she collapsed in her chair, trembling. What was she supposed to do? Tell John the truth? Keep treating him like a stranger? What about the twins? Did they have the right to know that their father was back, even if he didn't remember them? Mary picked up the phone, dialing Lisa's number with trembling fingers. She needed advice, support, but most of all, she needed the courage to face whatever fate had in store for her. As the phone rang, Mary looked at the photo of Michael and Olivia on her desk. Their bright smiles, full of hope and innocence, reminded her of what was really important. Whatever happened to John, she needed to protect her children, to guide them through this new storm. With a deep sigh, Mary straightened up. She had overcome abandonment, raised 2 wonderful children on her own, and built a successful career. She could handle this too. One day at a time, one step at a time. When Lisa answered, Mary said simply, "You won't believe what just happened." Mary's office was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. She stared at the diary on her desk, the name John Doe leaping off the page as if in neon. It had been a week since the shocking reunion, and Mary was still struggling to process her emotions. A soft knock on the door brought her out of her thoughts. "Come in," she called, straightening up in her chair and adjusting her blazer. John entered, his steps hesitant, his eyes roaming the office as if searching for something familiar. Mary felt her heart squeeze. There was a time when she knew every nuance of his expressions, every inflection of his voice. Now, he was a stranger sitting in front of her. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Doe?" Mary asked, maintaining a professional tone. John shrugged, a gesture so familiar that Mary had to stop herself from reacting. "Confused, mostly," he replied. "It's frustrating not knowing who you are, you know? Looking in the mirror and seeing a face you don't recognize." Mary nodded, making notes. "It's understandable. Amnesia can be extremely disorienting. Let's work together to help you navigate these turbulent waters." As she conducted the session, Mary struggled internally. Every fiber of her being screamed to tell the truth, to tell John who he was, who she was, about Michael and Olivia. But her training and professional ethics prevented her. Revealing such information could be devastating for John's recovery. "I've been having dreams," John said suddenly, frowning. "Or maybe they're memories. I'm not sure." Mary leaned forward, interested. "What kind of dreams?" "There's a woman," John said slowly, his eyes closed in concentration. "She's pregnant, I think. I'm happy, very happy. But then there's anger, so much anger that it scares me." Mary felt her heart racing. Were those John's memories of the birth of the twins? About the day he rejected them? "How do you feel about those dreams?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. John opened his eyes, an expression of anguish on his face. "Guilty," he whispered. "Even without knowing why, I feel terribly guilty." Mary fought the urge to reach out and comfort John. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, "These dreams or memories can be a window into your past. It's important that we explore these feelings, but without rushing into them. The brain has its own protective mechanisms, and forcing memories can be counterproductive." John nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you, Dr. Smith. I feel safe here, with you, as if, like we've known each other for a long time." Mary felt a lump in her throat. "I'm glad you feel comfortable," she managed to say. "Trust is crucial in the therapeutic process." When the session ended, Mary watched John leave, her heart heavy with undisclosed secrets. As soon as the door closed, she picked up the phone and dialed Lisa's number. "Hey, Mary," Lisa's voice sounded on the other end. "How was it?" Mary sighed deeply. "Difficult," she admitted. "Lisa, he's starting to have flashbacks. What if he suddenly remembers everything? What if—" Breathe, Mary, Lisa interrupted gently. You're a professional. You know how to deal with this. As a therapist, yes, Mary said. But as a person, as the woman he rejected, as the mother of the children he abandoned, I don't know if I can do that, Lisa. There was a moment of silence before Lisa answered. You're the strongest person I know, Mary. You've overcome abandonment, raised two incredible children on your own, built a successful career. You can handle it too. Lisa's words calmed Mary, reminding her of her own strength. Thank you, Lisa. I don't know what I'd do without you. After hanging up, Mary looked at her watch. It was time to pick up the twins from school. As she drove, her mind wandered between the past and the present, between old pain and new challenges. In the school parking lot, she spotted Michael and Olivia. Her son was walking with his shoulders slumped, a stark contrast to Olivia's normally confident posture. Mary felt her heart squeeze. Something was wrong. "Hey, my loves," she called out as they approached the car. "How was your day?" Michael threw his backpack onto the back seat with more force than necessary. "Bad," he muttered. Olivia cast a worried glance at her brother before turning to her mother. "There was an incident at basketball practice," she explained hesitantly. Mary waited until everyone was in the car before asking, "What kind of incident?" Michael crossed his arms, his face a mask of anger and hurt. "Some guys on the team, they said I only got in because the school needs to fill a diversity quota." Anger flared in Mary's chest, mixed with a deep sadness. It was as if the past was repeating itself, the same prejudice that had destroyed her marriage now hurting her son. "Oh, darling," she said softly, turning to look at Michael. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, but you know it's not true, right? You made the team because of your talent and dedication." Michael shrugged, but Mary could see tears forming in his eyes. "Sometimes I wish I was like everyone else," he whispered. Olivia reached out, taking her brother's hand. "But you're not like everyone else, Mike. You're better." Mary felt her heart fill with pride at Olivia's support. "Your sister is right, Michael. Being different isn't a weakness, it's a strength. You're both special, unique, and I wouldn't trade you for anything in the world." As she drove home, Mary thought of John, of her emerging memories, of how their life might have been different if he had accepted the twins from the start. But then she looked in the rearview mirror, seeing Michael and Olivia talking quietly in the back seat, and realized that nothing would change. They were a family, the three of them, imperfect perhaps, but united by love and adversity overcome together. And as long as they had each other, they could face whatever challenges the future brought, including John's possible return to their lives. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Mary's office, painting the room in golden and amber tones. John was sitting in the leather armchair, his fingers drumming nervously on the arm of the chair. There was a palpable tension in the air, as if they both sensed that they were on the verge of an important revelation. Mary watched John closely, noticing the worry lines on his forehead, the way his blue eyes seemed distant, lost in hazy memories. She took a deep breath, centering herself, preparing herself for what was to come. "John," she began softly, "you mentioned in the last session that you were having dreams, or maybe memories. Would you like to explore that further today?" John nodded slowly, his eyes finally focusing on Mary. "Yes, I think I need to. These dreams, they're getting more frequent, more vivid. It's as if, like my past is trying to burst through a wall in my mind." Mary made a note on her pad, her heart racing slightly. "Can you tell me more about these dreams? What do you see? What do you feel?" John closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. There's a meeting, men in suits discussing something about purity, about keeping things as they should be. I feel powerful there, important, but there's also a sense of shame, as if deep down I knew something was wrong. Mary felt a chill run down her spine. Were these the memories of John's racist activities? She struggled to keep her expression neutral, professional. Go on, John. What else do you see? There are posters, slogans, words that make me feel nauseous now, but which at the time seemed right. John opened his eyes, an expression of horror on his face. Dr. Smith, who was I? What have I done? Mary felt her heart break as she saw the pain in John's eyes. Part of her wanted to comfort him, to tell him that everything would be all right, but she knew that the truth, however painful, was necessary for his healing. John, she said softly, you seem to be starting to remember events from your past. It's important that you understand that the person you were then doesn't necessarily define who you are now. Amnesia has given you a unique opportunity to rediscover yourself, to make choices based on who you want to be, not who you were. John shook his head, tears shining in his eyes. But what if I've done terrible things? How can I live with myself? Mary hesitated for a moment, weighing her words carefully. The regret you're feeling now, John, is a sign that you've changed. The person you were may have made the wrong choices, but the person you are now has the chance to make a difference, to correct those mistakes. As she spoke, Mary couldn't help but think of Michael and Olivia, of how they would be affected if John completely regained his memory. Would it be fair to them? Would it be safe? John leaned forward, his hands shaking slightly. Dr. Smith, I feel like there's something else, something important that I'm forgetting, something to do with family. Mary felt her heart skip a beat. She knew she was walking a fine line between her professional ethics and her personal involvement in this situation. But she also knew that she couldn't deny John the chance to rediscover his true identity. John, she said carefully, memory recovery is a delicate process. We can't force it. But if you feel that there are family-related memories trying to emerge, perhaps we can explore this in a gradual and controlled way. John nodded, looking both anxious and apprehensive. How can we do that? Mary thought for a moment. We can start with guided visualization exercises. I'll ask you to close your eyes and focus on images or sensations related to the idea of family. Don't force anything. Just let the images come naturally. John closed his eyes, his breathing slowly calming under Mary's guidance. She watched carefully, noticing every subtle change in his expression. I see. A nursery, John said softly. There are 2 cribs, twins, I think. I feel happy, very happy. But then there's anger, so much anger. Mary felt her heart squeeze. She knew exactly what that memory was. What happens next, John? She asked, her voice barely masking her emotion. John opened his eyes abruptly, his face pale. I don't know. It's like there's a wall there. I can't see past it. Mary nodded, trying to hide her relief. It's all right, John. You've made significant progress today. It's important not to force the memories. They'll come when the time is right. When the session ended, Mary watched John leave, her heart heavy with the knowledge he was carrying. She knew she was walking a dangerous line, but she couldn't deny John the chance of redemption, of righting the wrongs of the past. That evening, at home, Mary watched Michael and Olivia doing their homework at the kitchen table. Her children, so innocent and full of potential, with no idea of the storm that was approaching in their lives. Mom? Olivia's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "Are you all right? You look worried." Mary forced a smile. "I'm fine, dear, just thinking about work." Michael looked up from his math book. "Is it about that new patient? The guy with amnesia?" Mary hesitated. She had always been honest with her children, but how could she explain this situation? How could she prepare them for the possibility of their father coming back into their lives? "Yes," she finally answered. It's a complicated case." Olivia tilted her head, her eyes piercing. "Mom, you always taught us to face problems head on. What's really going on?" Mary looked at her children, feeling a surge of love and pride. They were strong, compassionate, much more mature than she was at their age. Maybe they could handle the truth. "Children," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to tell you. It's about your father." Michael and Olivia's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and curiosity on their faces. Mary took a deep breath, preparing herself for the most difficult conversation of her life. But she knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together, like the strong, close-knit family they were. The morning sun bathed the quiet streets of Millbrook, a small town that, until recently, lived in a bubble of apparent harmony. Now, colorful posters announced an imminent community event, promising unity and reconciliation. But behind the well-kept facades and polite smiles, a palpable tension hung in the air. Mary Smith walked hurriedly down the sidewalk, her heels echoing in the morning silence. She stopped briefly in front of one of the posters, her hands trembling slightly as she read the words, "United in diversity, building bridges, not walls." It was hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, this very community was on the brink of open conflict. The news of John's return and his amnesia had spread like wildfire through the small town. For some, it was an opportunity for redemption. For others, it was a threat to the status quo they had carefully maintained for years. Mary vividly remembered the town council meeting when the truth came out. The shocked faces of her neighbors, the growing buzz, the flying accusations. "How can we trust him?" shouted Mr. Thompson, owner of the local grocery store. "He may have forgotten what he did, but we haven't." "He deserves a second chance," argued Mrs. Rodriguez, a teacher at the local school. "We all make mistakes. If he's changed, shouldn't we give him the chance to prove it?" The argument had escalated, threatening to split the community in half. It was then that Lisa, with her experience in civil rights, stepped forward. "Listen, all of you," she said, her firm voice cutting through the uproar. "This is a unique opportunity, not just for John, but for all of us. A chance to confront our prejudices, to grow as a community. Let's use this as a catalyst for positive change." His words had planted a seed. In the days that followed, the idea of the community event was born and grew, taking on a life of its own. Mary smiled as she remembered it, feeling a wave of gratitude for her friend. Lisa had been tireless, working day and night to organize workshops, panel discussions, and activities that promoted understanding and empathy. Arriving at the community center, Mary found Lisa already there, surrounded by enthusiastic volunteers. "Mary!" Lisa called out, waving. "Come and see this. The teenagers from the school have prepared an incredible performance for tonight." Mary approached, watching the young people rehearsing a play that portrayed different experiences of prejudice and overcoming it. Her heart filled with pride when she saw Michael and Olivia among them, their faces serious and focused. "They look amazing," Mary whispered, thrilled. Lisa nodded, a smile on her lips. "They're the future, Mary, and look how maturely and compassionately they're handling it." The hours flew by as everyone prepared for the big event. Mary alternated between helping with the organization and offering emotional support to John, who was visibly nervous about his planned participation. "What if they hate me?" John asked, his voice shaky as they paused backstage. "What if I don't deserve this second chance?" Mary felt her heart squeeze. Despite everything they had been through, seeing John so vulnerable and remorseful awakened a compassion she didn't know she still possessed. "John," she said softly, "the fact that you're asking yourself these questions already shows how much you've changed. Remember, it's not just about you, it's about healing for the whole community." Mary's words seemed to calm John, who nodded slowly, a look of determination replacing the fear in his eyes. As night fell, the community center filled with people. There was tension in the air, but also a palpable sense of hope. Mary watched with pride as Michael and Olivia took to the stage with their colleagues, their young but firm voices echoing around the room. "We are the future," declared Michael, his voice resonating with conviction. "And we have chosen a future of acceptance, of understanding." "Our differences don't divide us," Olivia continued, her eyes shining. "They make us stronger, richer as a community." One by one, the young people shared stories of prejudice, pain, but also of overcoming and hope. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience when they finished. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for with anticipation and apprehension. John took to the stage, his face pale but determined. "Good evening," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Many of you knew me before my amnesia. Others only know the rumors, the stories about who I was and what I did." He paused, his eyes scanning the audience. Mary held her breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I can't change the past," John continued. "I can't undo the harm I've caused. But I'm here today, in front of all of you, to ask for forgiveness, to promise that I will do everything in my power to right my wrongs and be a better member of this community." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mary could feel the tension, the conflicting emotions hanging in the air. Then, slowly, one person stood up, then another, and another. "We forgive you," said Mrs. Rodriguez, tears in her eyes. "We're willing to give you a chance," added Mr. Thompson, his voice hoarse with emotion. One by one, members of the community came forward, offering words of forgiveness, of hope, of unity. Mary felt tears streaming down her face, watching as years of hurt and prejudice began to dissolve before her eyes. As the evening drew to a close, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. People who used to barely look at each other were now chatting animatedly, exchanging stories and promises of a better future. Mary found John backstage, his face a mixture of relief and disbelief. "I didn't expect," he began, his voice breaking. Mary smiled softly. Sometimes all people need is a chance to show their best. As they watched the crowd disperse, Mary felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Michael and Olivia, their faces glowing with pride and hope. "You guys were amazing," she said, pulling them into a tight hug. "We learned from the best," Michael replied, smiling at his mother. In that moment, surrounded by her family and her changing community, Mary felt a wave of hope so strong that it almost knocked her over. The road ahead would still be long and challenging, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that they were all moving together in the right direction. The school gymnasium was full of anticipation and energy. The aroma of popcorn and the sound of sneakers squeaking on the polished floor filled the air. It was the night of the state basketball championship final, and Michael Smith was in the spotlight. In the stands, Mary fidgeted nervously, her eyes fixed on her son stretching out on the court. Next to her, Olivia clutched a violin in her lap, her fingers drumming anxiously on the strings. "He'll do fine, Mom," Olivia whispered, sensing Mary's tension. "Michael was born for it." Mary nodded, a quivering smile on her lips. She couldn't help but think about how far they'd come, the struggles and triumphs her children had faced over the last few months. For Michael, the road to this final had been paved with challenges. After that fateful day when his teammates accused him of being a diversity quota, he almost gave up basketball. Mary vividly remembered the night she found him crying in his room, the basketball tossed in the corner. "I can't take it anymore, Mom," he sobbed. "Why can't they see me for who I am? Why does it always have to be about the color of my skin?" Mary's heart broke to see her son so defeated. But she knew that this was a crucial moment, a moment that would define Michael's character. "My love," she said softly, sitting down next to him on the bed, "life isn't always fair. There will be people who try to diminish you, to label you, but you have a choice. You can let them define who you are, or you can show them exactly what you're capable of." Michael looked up, tears still glistening on his cheeks. "How?" "By being the best you can be," Mary replied firmly. "Not to prove something to them, but to prove yourself. Every pitch, every play is a chance to show your true strength." That conversation had been a turning point for Michael. Over the next few weeks, he devoted himself to training with renewed intensity. His skills improved dramatically, and soon even his most skeptical colleagues couldn't deny his talent. Now, watching her son prepare for the most important game of his young career, Mary felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She knew how much this night meant to Michael. The whistle blew, signaling the start of the game. Michael moved with grace and determination, his eyes focused and his posture confident. With every basket he scored, the crowd roared with approval. Mary watched in amazement as her son transformed on the court. It wasn't just his athletic ability that shone through, but his leadership, his ability to unite the team. She saw how he encouraged his teammates, how he kept his cool under pressure. The game was fierce, with the teams exchanging the lead several times. In the final seconds, with Michael's team trailing by 1 point, the ball was passed to him. The whole gym seemed to hold its breath. Michael positioned himself, his eyes fixed on the basket. For a brief moment, Mary saw a flash of doubt pass across her son's face. But then, as if sensing his mother's gaze, Michael looked up. Their gazes met, and Mary nodded imperceptibly, conveying all her trust and love in that simple gesture. With renewed determination, Michael jumped. The ball left his hands in a perfect arc, spinning in the air as time seemed to slow down. And then, swoosh! The net rattled as the ball went clean through the hoop. The gymnasium erupted in shouts and applause. Michael was engulfed by his teammates, all jumping and shouting for joy. Mary stood up, tears of pride streaming down her face as she clapped frantically. When the initial euphoria passed and the medals were handed out, Michael ran to the stands, hugging his mother and sister tightly. "Did you see?" he exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. "We did it!" "We did, my love," Mary replied, her voice breaking. "You were amazing." Olivia hugged her brother, a beaming smile on her face. "Congratulations, Mike. Now it's my turn to shine, huh?" Michael laughed, ruffling his sister's hair affectionately. "I can't wait to see you rock the stage, little sister." As the family left the gym, Mary couldn't help but notice how much her children had grown, not just physically, but in character and inner strength. Michael had faced prejudice and emerged victorious, not just in basketball, but as a person. A few days later, it was Olivia's turn to face her own challenge. The auditorium of the prestigious Academy of Music was packed for the annual recital, where the best students performed. Olivia would be the last to play, the place of honor reserved for the most promising student. Backstage, Olivia took a deep breath, her fingers caressing the strings of her violin. Mary approached, gently adjusting her daughter's dress. "Nervous?" Mary asked softly. Olivia nodded, biting her lip. "What if I'm not good enough, Mom? What if I let everyone down?" Mary held her daughter's hands, looking into her eyes. "Olivia, my love, you're already more than good enough. Your music comes from the heart, and that's what touches people. Don't think about being perfect. Think about being real." Mary's words seemed to calm Olivia down. She took another deep breath, her shoulders visibly relaxing. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered, hugging Mary briefly before heading towards the stage. Mary returned to her place in the audience, taking a seat next to Michael, who smiled encouragingly. When Olivia took to the stage, a reverent silence fell over the auditorium. Olivia positioned the violin, closed her eyes for a moment, and then began to play. The first notes floated through the air, delicate and crystalline. But as the music progressed, it gained strength and depth. Mary watched in amazement as her daughter transformed before her eyes. All the pressure, all the doubt seemed to have disappeared. Olivia was in her element, her music telling a story of overcoming, of joy, of love. When the last note echoed through the auditorium, there was a moment of stunned silence before the audience erupted into applause. Olivia opened her eyes, a radiant smile lighting up her face as she bowed. Later, surrounded by congratulating teachers and classmates, Olivia ran to hug her mother and brother. "Did you hear?" she asked, her eyes shining with emotion. "It was as if, like the violin was part of me." "It was amazing, Liv," Michael said, hugging his sister proudly. "You did great." Mary hugged her children, her heart overflowing with love and pride. In that moment, watching Michael and Olivia, so confident and accomplished, she knew that all the struggles, all the tears had been worth it. Her children had faced challenges that could have broken them, but instead strengthened them. They had learned to turn adversity into motivation, prejudice into determination. And in the process, they had become not just talented artists and athletes, but compassionate and resilient people. As they left the auditorium, Mary couldn't help but think of John, of how proud he would have been to see his children shine like that. But she quickly pushed that thought aside. Tonight was about celebrating the present, Michael and Olivia's triumph. The future, with all its challenges and possibilities, could wait until tomorrow. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the streets of Millbrook, tinging the sky with shades of orange and pink. Mary walked slowly through the Central Park, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions and memories. The last few months had been a roller coaster of events. John's return, the community's fight against prejudice, Michael and Olivia's triumphs. Now, as she headed for what could be the most important meeting of her life, she felt the weight of all these experiences on her shoulders. The wooden bench where John was waiting for her was partially hidden by a large oak tree. As she approached, Mary noticed how different he looked. It wasn't just his physical appearance, although the wrinkles on his face seemed deeper and his hair grayer. It was something in his eyes, a mixture of regret, hope, and fear. "Mary," John said softly, standing up when he saw her. "Thank you for coming." Mary nodded, taking a seat next to him, keeping a safe distance. "You said it was important, that you had something to tell me." John took a deep breath, his hands clenching nervously. "Yes, I've discovered something that changes everything." Mary felt her heart race. After everything they'd been through, what else could there be? "Do you remember Frank Dawson?" John asked, his voice trembling. Mary frowned. Frank Dawson was a name she hadn't heard for years. He had been a close friend of John's, sharing his prejudiced views. "Yes, I remember," she replied cautiously. "He's on trial," John continued, his voice low and intense, "for hate crimes. And during the trial, he confessed to something." Mary felt a chill run down her spine. What, John? What did he confess to? John closed his eyes as if gathering his courage. When he opened them again, they were full of tears. He confessed that he used me, Mary, that he manipulated my memories, my thoughts, that he planted ideas in my head, making me believe things, horrible things. Mary was speechless, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. Apparently, John continued, his voice breaking, Frank was involved in illegal mind manipulation experiments. He used drugs, hypnosis, techniques that I don't even fully understand, and I was one of his guinea pigs. The world around Mary seemed to spin. She clung to the bench, trying to steady herself. Are you saying that all those things you did, all those horrible things you said, they weren't really me? John added, tears now streaming freely down his face. Or at least, not entirely. Frank admitted that he chose to use me as a scapegoat for his own acts of hatred. He amplified my fears, my insecurities, turning them into something monstrous. Mary felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. All those years of pain, of anger, of trying to understand how the man she loved could have turned into someone so full of hate. And now this? But why? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. John shook his head, looking as lost as she was. Frank was obsessed with the idea of proving that racism was something natural, something that could be triggered in anyone. He chose me because I was normal, an ordinary guy with no history of prejudice. He wanted to prove that he could turn even someone like me into a monster. Silence fell between them, heavy and oppressive. Mary looked at the horizon, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Her mind was in turmoil, trying to reconcile this new information with years of painful memories. It doesn't erase what happened, John, she finally said, her voice steady despite the emotions running through her. It doesn't erase the pain you caused me and the children. John nodded, his face a mask of regret. I know, Mary. Believe me, I know. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or to pretend that this fixes everything. I'm here because you deserve to know the truth. You and the children deserve to know that the man you knew before, the man who loved you more than anything, he still exists. He always existed, buried under layers of lies and manipulation. Mary felt hot tears running down her cheeks. It was too much to process, too much to feel at once. Part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to hug John and never let go. What happens now? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. John shrugged, a gesture of vulnerability that reminded Mary painfully of the man she had loved. I don't know. It doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase the years we lost, the pain I caused. But maybe it can change the future. He looked at Mary, his eyes pleading for something. Understanding, forgiveness, a chance. Mary took a deep breath, feeling the weight of this decision. She thought of Michael and Olivia, how they had grown, how they had overcome so many challenges. She thought of the community, slowly learning to heal old wounds and build bridges. And she thought of herself, of the strong woman she had become, able to weather any storm. John, she began slowly, choosing each word carefully, it changes a lot of things, but it doesn't change everything. We need time to process, to heal, to rebuild. I can't promise that things will go back to the way they were before because that's impossible, but... She paused, gathering her courage for her next words. But I'm willing to try, to give us, our family, a chance to find a new path together. John's face lit up with a mixture of relief and hope. It's more than I could ask for, Mary, more than I deserve. Mary reached out, gently touching John's arm. It's not about deserving, John. It's about choosing forgiveness, choosing healing, choosing a better future. For us, for our children, for the whole community. As the sun finally disappeared over the horizon, Mary and John sat on that bench in silence. It wasn't a comfortable silence, not yet. It was full of painful memories, regrets, and uncertain hopes. But it was also full of possibilities. Mary knew that the road ahead would be difficult. There would be days of doubt, moments of resurfaced anger, challenges that would test her resolve. But looking at John, seeing the man she once loved slowly emerging from the shadows of the past, she felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. They would have to rebuild trust, step by step. They would have to face Michael and Olivia's reactions, navigate the complexities of reintegrating John into their lives. They would have to deal with the community, some of whom might see this revelation as a betrayal of their newly established trust. But Mary was ready to face these challenges, because now she understood that true strength lay not in never falling, but in always getting up, in choosing love over hate, understanding over judgment, hope over fear. As the stars shone above them, Mary and John stood up, ready to take their first hesitant steps towards an uncertain future, but one full of possibilities. And at that moment, under the night sky of Millbrook, a new story began to be written, a story of redemption, of second chances, and of the transformative power of love and forgiveness. If you enjoyed this story, I invite you to like and subscribe to my channel. Your support motivates me to keep sharing exciting stories nearly every day. Don't miss the next amazing story that's about to unfold on your screen. I greatly appreciate your backing.